Right, this is our group project presentation, and for our presentation, we selected a new hotel construction in the greater Cleveland, Ohio area. So the project objective is to construct a full-service hotel with modern amenities within 24 months at a cost not to exceed $20 million in the greater Cleveland, Ohio area. The product scope description is a hotel that includes 100 rooms and modern amenities such as conference rooms, Wi-Fi, fitness center, and a restaurant. Some deliverables for the project include approved construction plans, a completed hotel structure with all amenities, and all zoning and regulatory approvals. So the milestones for this project starting in February of 2026 with the permits and zoning approval, followed by a groundbreaking scheduled in early March of 26. From March until October would be the outdoor structural completion. From October through February of 27 would be the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems would be completed. From February through June would be the completion of all the interior work. The furnishings would be added from June through August, with final inspections taking place early September. By the 1st of October, the certificate of occupancy would be issued. And to wrap up the project, there would be a ribbon cutting ceremony scheduled for mid-October, putting the overall project timeline right under the 24-month timeframe. So some technical requirements for the construction. The hotel must meet Ohio building codes and Cleveland zoning requirements. Each room would be 400 square feet. There would be handicap accessible rooms, entrances, elevators, and restrooms. Fire safety compliant, including sprinkler system, emergency exits, and fire alarms. There would be centralized heating and cooling in each room, as well as energy efficient lighting throughout the hotel. Plumbing, including hot and cold water for each room. Each room would also have Wi-Fi access. There would be a security system for controlled access to each individual room. And lastly, guest entertainment, including smart TVs and cable. Some limits and exclusions for the project. The first would be the purchase or lease of the land would not be included in the scope. The next three have to do with weather, since construction takes place in Cleveland and the weather, especially in the winter time frame, can be very volatile in that area. So the construction activities could be delayed due to snow, ice, or freezing temperatures. Any costs or logistics for snow and ice removal from the construction site would not be included, and those must be contracted out separately. Any repairs resulting from flooding, high winds, or any other severe weather events are also excluded unless otherwise covered by the insurance policy. The next several have to do with subcontracting work. The subcontracting work is limited to just weekdays and could also be subject to additional union requirements. The last several have to do with post-construction. So the recruitment, hiring, and training of hotel staff would not be in scope. Any additional software beyond what is required for the basic hotel operations is also excluded. Ongoing maintenance or repairs that are needed after the issuance of the certificate of occupancy are out of scope. And lastly, any changes to the original design, scope, or materials requested after the project initiation require separate approval and may impact the cost and schedule. For the customer review portion, it would be completed by either the project sponsor or the client representative. The project priority matrix, since we have a strict 24-month timeline to complete the project, time would be constrained. We would enhance the performance. And lastly, we would accept the cost. And then the work breakdown structure, we have it broken down into 3 segments, and within each segment, there's some other subsegments there. So starting pre-construction, this includes things such as zoning and permits, design and planning, architectural design, and engineering plans, followed by the construction portion, which is interior construction, which consists of drywall, painting, flooring. You have your MEP installation, and that's your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems and all related activities to that. And lastly, foundation and structural work. That includes excavation, foundation, framing, and roofing. And then lastly, for the post-construction, this would include things like furnishings, equipment, all the decorations, technology, Wi-Fi, smart TVs. And then lastly, the final inspections, including the building code compliance and the certificate of occupancy. Next, I'm going to give it to Eric to talk through the preliminary schedule.
All right, so since we are on a tight 24 month schedule, we put together a little preliminary schedule, broke down into 5 phases. Phase one, the planning phase, which we are preliminarily allotting 3 months for. The first 3 months we'd be dedicated to planning, initiating the project, conducting a risk assessment to focus on acquiring the land, applying for permits, initial permits, and putting some preliminary costs and estimates down. Phase two would be the design phase, which we would allot 6 months for. The deliverables would be provided to the engineering teams who would in turn put together a building plan that we would submit for final approvals to the city. Phase three would be the procurement and logistics planning phase, which we are would allot 3 months. This consists of the logistics planning, procurement of the resources for the projects. We'd conduct bids with general contractors before we ultimately select which general contractor we're going with that aligns with our budget and quality standards. The logistics planning would take place with how the materials would be delivered to site, what routes would be taken, overall construction, how would it be managed in the area. Then the biggest phase is phase four, construction, which we are allotting preliminarily 11 months. This is where the build to take place with the general contractor, where they would follow our layout from the engine designed by the engineers. We'd have weekly meetings to go over the cost or the budget, the progress, and other challenges that may take place. And the last phase is the closeout and review, which initially we'd set for 1 month. We'd go over the final quality checks, the review process, and go over the final product for the stakeholders. Next, we would be allotting our resources, and we'd have this broke down into personnel allocation and budget allocation. For the personnel, we would break it down to the engineering teams, the general contractor, the purchasing and logistics teams, and then finance and controllers. The engineering team would mostly be during the design phase, where they're putting the building plans together for the hotel. General contractor obviously is during the construction, where they're executing the design plan and maintaining their construction budgets. Purchasing and logistics teams would be during the planning, procurement and planning phases, bidding out the process or the contracts in the logistics. And then the finance controller would be during all phases, monitoring the budget, maintaining payments to our vendors, and making sure that we're staying on track. And then the budget allocation, as Holly mentioned, we have $20 million. So the initial budget allocation would be allotted to $1.5 million for the land purchase, to purchase our land zone land that's suitable for hotel builds. The construction costs we would be allotting $12 million for the foundation, the structure, the walls, roof, plumbing, anything else that would go into that. And then $1.5 million would be set aside for permits, building, zoning permits, legal fees, anything associated with getting set up. And then $4 million would be set aside for operating expenses. This would include your furniture, your TVs, your linens, anything the hotel would need, smart TVs, anything the hotel would need to operate. And then we'd also set aside $1 million for reserve for any unforeseen expenses and delays. So we did do a risk assessment as well. We identified a few on here. Some of the big ones with higher impacts were permitting delays, general contractor performance, and blown budgets. Permitting delays, common when you're submitting permits, sometimes you can run into issues and holdups with the city. Our suggestion would be for the project manager for us to stay in contact with the city and keep an open line of communication to see where we're at with the permits as they go on. General contractor performance, we would like, as we mentioned previously, we'd like to have weekly meetings to go over the progress, make sure our standards are being met before we get to the end of the project and suddenly have shocking discoveries. And then blown budgets. We did set aside $1 million, but it's obviously it can happen in any project, so we want to maintain that budget throughout the project. Another one was delays in construction. As Holly mentioned previously, in Northeast Ohio, you can run into any unforeseen delays due to Cleveland winter weather. So we did put that as a pretty high risk assessment or risk also.
Next up, we have the finalized schedule, and this part is the rolled up estimates. So for planning and design, we gave about 3 months from November 2025 to January 2026, with an estimated cost of about $1 million. And then next, we had the permitting and approvals, which we gave about a month, so February 2026, again costing around $250,000. And then moving on to the site preparation and groundbreaking, we gave that another month, which was March 2026, which would cost about $500,000. Then moving on after that, we finally have the construction, which would be about 7 months from March 2026 to September 2026, costing about $6 million total. Then after that, we have the MEP, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, which would then be another 4 months from October 2026 to January 2027, costing around $3 million. After that, we'd move on to interior construction and then finishing up the hotel on the inside, which would be about 4 months from February 2027 through May 2027, costing about $4 million itself. Then after that, we would add the furnishing and equipment such as TVs, anything else that may be added, which would cost around 2 months from June 2027 through July 2027, which would be around $2.5 million. And then after that, we would have our final inspections and approvals, which would take about a month long, which would be August 2027, costing about $250,000. And then we also have a buffer contingency of 7.5% that would allow for any possible delays or risks that come up out of nowhere, which would be about $1.5 million. So after that total, it would be around 24 months with an estimated $19 million. And with this estimate, there's also $1 million worth of contingency providing flexibility under the $20 million cap. And then after that, we have our financial requirements, which is also known as the cash flow and roll up. This is broken down into time period, estimated spending, and its key activities. So for quarter four of 2025, like we said, $500,000 for planning and designs. Quarter one of 2026 would be 750,000 worth of estimated spending for final designing, permits, and zoning. And then quarter two, 2026 would be about 1 million with groundbreaking and construction start. Quarter three, 2026 would be about 3 million with structure building. Quarter four, 2026 would be about 3 million, and takes care of the MEPs, the mechanical, plumbing, electrical systems. And then we move on to quarter one of 2027, which would be around $2.5 million, which then again takes care of mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and the beginning of the interiors. And then in quarter two of 2027, it costs around $3 million, which you see the completion of the interior and start of furnishing. And then quarter three, 2027, another 3 million, which would be the furnishing, inspections, and final approvals. And then with quarter four, 2027, you see $2,225,000 worth of final finishes and wrap up and any use of contingency, which also leads to cutting the ribbon. This total runs to $19 million, and the cash flow slowly ramps up throughout the building of the hotel as construction intensifies, and it peaks in the mid-late 2026 through the middle of 2027. After this, we have our stakeholder analysis, where you can see the stakeholder, the role, influence they hold, their interest and influence level. The project sponsor and client rep, they improve funding and key decisions with a high interest and high influence level. The city of Cleveland that provides zoning and permits, their role influences regulatory approvals with an interest level of medium and an influence level of high. Next, we have our construction contractor who executes the work on the project, and they have a high interest level and a medium influence level. Then we have our subcontractors, which are the MEP and people who take care of interiors. Their specialized construction task. Their interest level is medium with an influence level of also medium. Then we have our community and local residents, which could be impacted by construction. Their interest level is medium with an influence level of low. Then we have our design and architecture team, who is responsible for plans and revisions with a high interest level and medium influence level. Next, we have our hotel operator and brand partner that may advise on amenities and branding for the hotel with the interest level of medium and an influence level of medium. Lastly, we have the legal and insurance team that reviews liability and compliance with a medium interest level and a medium influence level. Lastly, we have the keys to success, which is just stay strict to the timeline. Projects like this are known to be prone to weather delays, and the planning and construction and proper scheduling throughout this project is crucial. Management, make sure to include the contingency for the time and cost and closely check for any upcoming potential risks. That way you can avoid any problems. Alignment with stakeholders, make sure that you regularly engage with any sponsors, officials, and contractors to ensure that there is smooth communication to avoid any problems or unnecessary issues. Then we have quality control. Make sure to have inspections that are based on the project's milestones. These can help ensure performance and can help ensure that the standards are met before moving forward with anything else. Then you have change of management is a process used to manage and design any material changes to prevent scope creep and potential cost overruns. Then you have your management of vendors and subcontractors that provide clear contract terms, look at performance reviews, and they strictly enforce the weekday work schedule. It also allows them to be made aware of any work constraints beforehand. Next, we provide regulatory compliance. Get your legal teams and regulatory teams involved early to prevent any delays down the road. Lastly, we have provide clear deliverables and any scope boundaries. You should only focus on the construction and infrastructure. You should exclude any staffing, land, and any occupancy after completion.
And this is where I take over here. We are at the project update. For a little status report, at this point, we're about halfway through our 24-month schedule for building the hotel. The structure of the hotel is nearly complete with the foundation and framing and roofing all finished. Right now, crews are focusing on installing electrical and plumbing systems. We're doing well overall, but winter weather caused a few minor delays in exterior work. Because of that, our schedule performance index is a 0.96, which means we're slightly behind schedule. However, our cost of performance index is at a 1.02, which shows that we are spending a little less under budget so far. Even with the weather setbacks, the project team has kept things moving forward by adjusting schedules and keeping close communications with contractors. Quality inspections have gone well also, and the project continues to meet all building codes and requirements. When it comes to problem solving, one of our biggest challenges that we faced in this phase of construction was material delays, specifically with steel and now HVAC equipment. These delays have happened because of our supply chain problems and vendor scheduling issues. On top of that, the Cleveland winters brought several delays of snow and freezing temperatures, which focused us to temporarily pause on some site work outside due to safety reasons. These issues have pushed us even further behind, but the project team acted quickly and we were able to adjust and work together on interior framing. The general contractor was also given the approval for limited overtime during the spring to help catch up. We also improved on logistics planning by ordering materials with longer lead times and finding alternate shipping routes. These steps helped us stabilize the schedule again and made sure the project stayed close to its original budget. After we revised the project's estimates with the recent events, the project manager revised both the timeline and the budget with the new estimated completion date of October 30th of 2027, which is 2 weeks later than our original plan, with the small delay mainly because of weather and material delays, as I mentioned earlier. In the terms of cost, the updated estimate is $20.3 million, which is only a slight increase from the original 20. This change mostly comes to higher transportation costs of materials and limited overtime pay for construction crews. Unfortunately, the contingency reserve of $1 million is more than enough to cover the extra expenses, so no new funding is needed. Overall, the project continues to perform well. Quality standards are being met. Stakeholders are satisfied, and the project is still expected to deliver a high quality and full service in hotel.
Perfect. My name is Antonio. I'm going to discuss the management issue, specific problem that we faced. Um, like it states on the slide, we experienced a stakeholder misalignment, so a disagreement between our project sponsor and the design and architecture team. And this is more of a unique issue in project management because most of the time there's not as many stakeholders involved. But like we had previously discussed, there's several different parties involved in the planning and implementation of our plans for the hotel. So, like I mentioned, the project sponsor and the design architecture team had a disagreement on the decorations within the hotel. And that disagreement stemmed from the budgetary concerns that each party had. The project sponsor argued that the decoration budget should remain within $1 million, obviously, because it limits the financial burden on the project. Although there is less quality on the decorations from within the interior. It does, however, maintain our time frame of the construction of the interior design, whereas the design architecture team preferred a higher quality product from within, so a higher quality decoration from within the interior design also would cost approximately $5 million, and it would also extend the time frame by only a week or 2 weeks. So it didn't stay within the time frame. However, there was a higher quality product from within. So hotel patrons, when they walk inside, would be more impressed with how it looked. So that disagreement resulted in a setback of our planning stage. So we set aside the 3 months at the beginning, so it delayed us a bit. However, to solve the problem, actually, before we discuss the solving problem, I'm going to discuss what it resulted in. So, like I had mentioned, the project scope was a bit more delayed. The approval process, so the permits and stuff, were also delayed within that scope. And also the financial cost to rework the previous progress was present in the situation. Next slide. So how did we resolve it? Obviously, when it comes to these kinds of issues, stakeholders are the ones that have the most influence with planning projects. Therefore, it's not always easy to work out the disagreements that they have. However, like all business professionals, compromises are always available. And so um, we had to, like, and we discussed this at the beginning of the slides as well. We had to develop a stakeholder analysis. So essentially, we had to determine whether the project sponsor or the design and architecture team had more sway within the planning stages. We established a clear project mission. So the intention of the hotel was to create a high quality product available to people to bring in tourists to the Cleveland area. We implemented regular stakeholder meetings so that all stakeholders were involved in the process, not only these two, the project sponsor and the design team, so everyone was involved. We also organized a clear process for changing anything within the project planning. So it made it clear, and that if we had a disagreement with how things were going, there was a clear scope of how to change one problem or say it cannot be done. By establishing our structured chain of command and SOPs, we were able to establish a compromise between the both parties and without eliminating stakeholder involvement. So we weren't going to say the project sponsor was incorrect in their assessment of a lower budget for decorations versus the design team saying the higher quality decorations, obviously with more expense, was also out of scope. So we had to say both ideas are on the table. However, we can resolve it with a compromise. This allowed us to control the project scope, but it eliminated unnecessary delays in spending. So ultimately, what we did was we compromised on the $4 million budget that we had discussed earlier on interior design. And it also established less delay in the time frame. It allowed us to stay within the time frame of constructing the interior design, but it also didn't eliminate either side's ideas. So we were able to compromise between the stakeholder disagreement and on the and establish a good solution. So it didn't delay us that much more. Perfect. So in summary, our keys for successful completion of the hotel construction, I've laid out four main quality points. Obviously, there's more within project management, but these four are the ones we identified as the most important. Number one would be effective scope and change management. So we established a plan. This is our hotel, our project mission, everything aligned with that, and also acknowledging the fact that change will naturally occur. But if we allow a framework for which the change can be implemented, it keeps us on track and without unnecessary financial or logistical delays. Number two, we establish strong stakeholder communication and alignment. So, like I discussed, the stakeholder disagreements, those are also going to happen, but eliminating the negative disagreements and forcing a compromise within that will maintain effective teamwork amongst all stakeholders and other parties as well. Number three, risk and resource management. So this the f- the point of this would be to eliminate negative effects of potential threats. Obviously, they're going to happen. Like we mentioned, the weather delayed our project. However, if we built that into the time frame, it allowed the project to continue even within those threats. So acknowledging potential risks and threats and finding solutions around that by establishing a longer time frame to complete the project and also managing our resources appropriately. We built in a budget that allowed us to have $1 million of extra cap so that if we did need to extend like we did, we had that space available. And fourth, quality and time control. So the intention of this would be to prevent unsatisfactory deliverables, most specifically within quality of the hotel and the time frame. So the two most important deliverables that we established would be a high quality hotel that brings people to it and a hotel that is built within a reasonable time frame that doesn't take between 5 to 10 years of completion. So those are the most important keys for success, and it's evident from this application that we had a great project, and we if this was to be implemented in real life, we would have established enough um, room for errors that the resources would be able to accommodate all those situations. And we've also overcome setbacks with stakeholder disagreements and weather delays and other sorts of threats. Perfect.